We're starting to see some interesting stuff surrounding fruit and how it can influence sleep, ranging from the effects of polyphenols all the way down to the manipulation of specific hormone functions. It's pretty wild. I mean, for years and years, kind of thought that maybe fruit was too high in sugar, and too much of it is definitely not a good thing. But let's just jump right into the first one, and then we can kind of break down the nuance as we go. Now, after today's video, if you have dogs, check out Sundays for Dogs. Okay, I've been feeding my dogs Sundays for the last few years, so they are a sponsor on this channel, but they are the first human-grade dog food. So what that means is everything that is in it, you could literally eat as a human. Probably wouldn't taste that great to you, but you literally could. It's human grade. Okay, so it was created and formulated by a former veterinarian that was kind of tired of just the garbage dog food that's out there. So although it doesn't seem like it makes sense on this channel, I've talked about them for the last couple of years on my channel because I think it's important. Like, it really does make sense. We care about our own nutrition, but we need to be focusing on what our dogs get. And they're more similar to humans than we think as far as metabolism is concerned. So anyhow, I popped the link down below. If you have pups, give them a shot. That's an awesome discount link. It's on the first line of the description below this video. The first fruit we need to talk about is one that you wouldn't think would be so great for sleep because it's kind of high in sugar, and that's pineapple. Now, here's the important thing that we note with any of these fruits that we're talking about. They should not be consumed inside of a couple hours of bedtime. Okay, contrary to what some of the research shows on the surface, having a bunch of carbs right before bed might help you fall asleep, it might help sleep onset, but it disturbs your overall sleep quality throughout the rest of the night. So it creates an illusion of better sleep, but a lot of times it is not the case. Okay, so any of these fruits that are high in sugar that I'm going to talk about, you want to limit the consumption of them, and you want to have them a couple hours before bed. So with pineapple, this study was published in the Journal of Pineal Research. And what was very intriguing about this paper is they found that when subjects consumed pineapple, they had dramatic increases in melatonin levels 120 minutes after consumption. Now, ordinarily, we would see an increase in melatonin pretty quickly after consuming sugar. The reason is because you're going to have a spike in insulin. That insulin will allow what is called tryptophan to enter the brain, and then that tryptophan converts into serotonin and subsequently melatonin. Now, this is usually a pretty quick response. We're talking like 30 minutes-ish. So the fact that pineapple is eliciting a melatonin spike 120 minutes after consumption leads researchers to believe that it's a different mechanism. They don't particularly know what's going on, but it's something that is great because if it was a shorter effect, you would have to consume it closer to bedtime to get that effect. But if you consumed it closer to bedtime, sure, you might get the melatonin effect, but then you're gonna get a blood sugar crash later that would negatively impact your sleep. So you see where I'm getting at. Pineapple's unique because you can have it a couple hours before bed, get away from that high glycemic carb right before bed thing, and still get a sleep benefit. Pretty interesting. So what I recommend people do is maybe have it with a little bit of low-fat or even non-fat cottage cheese. Okay, got something that's higher carbohydrate, slow down the absorption of it with some protein, but you also have casein protein in cottage cheese. And the reason I also mention that is it's pretty darn tasty. Everyone likes cottage cheese with pineapple, or anyone that likes cottage cheese with pineapple. Okay, the next one is similar, and it was actually published in the same paper as the pineapple was, and that's oranges. It's funny because you're not going to find me talking about the benefits of oranges a whole lot. If I'm talking about the benefits of citrus fruit, I'm usually leading in with lemons or limes or something like that. But oranges seem to have the same kind of effect, where it's like 100 to 120 minutes prior to bed can have this impact. So I recommend maybe just one of the little teeny clementines, like the Cuties brand or whatever, just the little teeny ones. Pop one of those and put it again in some cottage cheese again. We don't want to go super high fat cottage cheese. Personally, not tons of data to back this up. It's all mechanistic stuff. I'm not the biggest fan of combining fats and carbs together. It just doesn't seem like the cells would like it. It's just too much fuel at once. So I usually go with a lower fat cottage cheese and like maybe a little bit of orange or something like that. Personally, I opt for the pineapple. Now, this next one is very interesting. And I'll tell a little story so that it all makes some sense too. Ever since I got COVID a couple years back, I ended up getting a pretty much kind of this recurring cough that would happen. And I know I'm not the only one. I've talked to dozens of people that just kind of have a recurring nocturnal cough. Now, when you look at kids, sometimes they deal with these nocturnal coughs too. So there was a study published in the journal Pediatrics that looked at kids that were dealing with nocturnal coughing episodes. And they gave them either 3 different types of honey, so they rotated the different types of honey, or a placebo. Every single honey group out of these 300 kids, every single one that had honey had improvements in their sleep and also subjective improvements in sleep markers based on questionnaire and how they felt. Now, the researchers speculate that it has to do with a couple of things. The antimicrobial and antibacterial effects of honey might affect things that are in the actual airway. But the other thing that's kind of interesting, almost the more mechanical piece, is that honey being so viscous, it sort of formed a viscous layer in the throat, preventing this cough a little bit more, which sounds so minuscule, like why? But if you're one of the people that has to deal with a nocturnal cough that comes at random, maybe having a little bit of honey before bed isn't the worst thing in the world to make it so that you don't have to wake up with this coughing episode. It's kind of neat. Now we move into this next one, which is very interesting, watermelon. Now, the thing I like about watermelon is although it's high glycemic, it's a low glycemic load. So you'd have to eat more than a cup or so of watermelon to start stacking up a lot of watermelon, right? What's wild is that watermelon doesn't seem to have a particular direct impact on sleep. The reason it makes my list is because of the hydration aspect. Now, Dr. Andrew Huberman has talked about this 2 or 3 times on his podcast before, where like, when we drink water, the rate at which we drink it does impact the absorption. So if 6 p.m. comes around and we're like, oh shoot, I have not been drinking enough water, I need to pound water, you're not going to absorb all the water the same as if you had been sipping it throughout the day. Okay, so the reason I say this is because I run into the same situation. A lot of times I forget to hydrate as much as I should, or I'll drink tea before bed and then I end up having to pee 3 or 4 hours after I go to bed, which is a bummer. Interesting thing about watermelon is because of the amount of glucose in it and the amount of water in it, it really does help hydration quite well. So if around dinner time you wanted to have some watermelon, around 6 p.m. or something, you had maybe a cup or a cup and a half of watermelon, that could be a very good way to get the hydration that you need and not have it just go right straight through you like you're drinking a couple bottles of water. Because there is a tremendous impact on hydration and how it affects our sleep. And this has been documented across the board for decades. Water intake influences our sleep. So if you find yourself dehydrated and you need to improve your sleep, well, watermelon might be key there. Now, the last one that I want to talk about before I've got some other tips that we can throw in that aren't just fruit. It's going to be one I've talked about in another video, that's going to be kiwis. Kiwis are interesting because there was a study that was published in the Asia Pacific Journal of Nutrition that demonstrated that when subjects had kiwis, they ended up having 42% better sleep onset and 13% better sleep efficiency. And they measured this multiple ways, okay? They didn't just do questionnaires, they actually measured it in scientific ways as well. This is intriguing because they ate these a little while before bed, not directly before bed, and it doesn't seem to just have to do with the carbohydrate impact. The researchers speculate it might have to do with antioxidant profiles, which can impact reactive oxygen species in our brain, oxidative stress, and help us get a more restorative, more quote-unquote efficient sleep, which is why we may have seen a 13% improvement in sleep efficiency. Now, a couple bonuses. These aren't fruits, but one of the things that you can do is take like 500 milligrams of a tryptophan supplement right before bed in conjunction with trying out these different fruits. Okay, the tryptophan can help that cycle in the brain producing more melatonin, whereas these fruits are kind of helping the onset and the other piece. So kind of tying those together. And then one last thing that I wanted to throw in there that's not necessarily a fruit, but it's one that I've talked about multiple times on this channel, and that's tart cherry juice. Now, if you go and you just eat cherries, you might not get the same benefit. Tart cherry juice, you can have about a quarter cup of it, and because it naturally contains melatonin, it's pretty powerful. As a matter of fact, it's probably the most powerful natural compound that you can get at a regular store that I've ever seen when it comes to sleep research. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but I want to say it was something like 84 minutes of additional sleep time when subjects had tart cherry juice. Really impacts sleep. And you can have that, again, an hour and a half, 2 hours before bed, just a quarter cup. You're talking 15 or so grams of carbs. Allocate your carbs appropriately so you can do something and accommodate that. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel. I'll see